It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 30, looking at the players of the 2025 Gold Cup. This episode is looking at the players of USA. Part 2, the selections. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 30 on the players of the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup. This episode is the second part of our coverage of USA's players. The final roster is released and we are looking at the selections. In part one, we compiled a list of players and their likelihood of reaching the final squad. That was based mostly on their participation since the 2023 Gold Cup. We considered a few other factors as well, and we also introduced the players, giving some biographical and career information, introducing actually the main players, not all of them. In part two here, our focus is the final squad. So this media cast is divided into three sections. Section one, we're going to give some preliminary information on the team. We actually do repeat some of what we said in part one, but more quickly. And section two is the main part of the media cast. We review the list that we compiled in section one and, in part one, the previous media cast, and we'll tell you who made the preliminary and final squads. We'll also try to predict the starters and to do, that's tough with the USA here. To do that, we examine each position and we're going to tell the story of who has played in the role since the last Gold Cup. For the USA, that'll be really covering, letting you know which players are not going to be here. Section two is the main part of the media cast. We review the list that we compiled in part one, and we'll tell you who made the final squad and the preliminary squad. We're also trying to predict starters here, which is going to be very tough for the USA. To do that, we're going to examine each position and tell the story of who has played in the role since the last Gold Cup. In the case of the USA, that'll kind of give an indication to you of who is missing. But we're also going to look at the lineups for the warm-up games. In this case, that's probably the best hint as to who are going to be the starters. In section three of the media cast, we will start with a spotlight review. That is a quick summary of the players who made the squad and our predicted starters. We'll also review surprise selections and non-selections, as well as new players and our long update on injuries. USA having a stunning number of injuries going into this cup. Let us jump right in and begin with section one, some information on the team. So teams are allowed to bring 26 players to the tournament, and the USA put out a squad list of 60, a 60-man preliminary squad, and so that means 34 players had to be cut from the final squad. Not so much as cut for the USA, but players who proved unable to make the cup for various reasons. And in a way, that's the more interesting part for the USA squad here. Let's take a look at recent games. We did look at this in more detail in part one, and also at the beginning of section two, we took a close look at the managerial situation over the period. Here, we're going to combine those two and kind of go through it more quickly. So we begin in going into the Gold Cup, and well, with some goings on before, Greg Berhalter released in December 2022, caretaker manager Anthony Hudson there for a while, and then caretaker manager BJ Callahan taking over. He is the one who leads them into the Gold Cup. They brought a B team to that cup and played 5 games, and that was in June of 2023. After that, new manager Greg Berhalter came in again, or back, for his second stint, and he did not have to go through the 2023 Nations League group stage games. The USA received a bye to the quarterfinal there. Rather, he just led them through 4 friendlies there in September and October. And for them, the Nations League 2023-24 season began in November with 2 quarterfinal matches there in November of 2023. They did win that set, so they proceeded to the Nations League finals in March of 2024. And after that, their next tournament was the Copa America. That started with 2 pre-Copa America friendlies in June of 2024, and then 3 games in the Cup itself, that also in June 2024. And getting knocked out at the group stage there cost Greg Berhalter his job, and interim manager Mickey Varis came in for the time being. Once again, USA did not have to participate in the Nations League group stage games, and so they played friendlies instead. They played 2 friendlies in September, and then new manager Mauricio Pochettino was hired, and his first games were 2 friendlies in October of 2023, and then he went on to manage them under the quarterfinals of the Nations League in November of 2024. They won those games, and then in the finals, semi-final and final, in March of 2025, they played 2 more games. They lost both of those games, so are currently on a pretty bad run. And I will mention that they played 3 friendlies in January, or we're counting it as 3. We're actually counting January 2024 game and 2 games in January 25 together in a group. Those tend to be recruitment friendlies for the USA, some B team players, some experimental players. So that's why we group them together there. Holy smoke, a lot of games there. In fact, that is 29 games, a bit more than most teams play. And our next order of business is looking at the formations. Well, despite all the changes in the managerial position, it was fairly consistent in terms of formations. They used a 4-3-3 formation in 52% of games, 15 out of those 29 games. And then the other formation, a 4-2-1-3, they used in 12 of the games, or 41% of the games. So there were just 2 games where they used a kind of a, we'll say, an unusual formation or a different formation. Those were the first 2 games under new manager Mauricio Pochettino. So a bit curious that he didn't go with what they usually used, but came in with some unexpected formations there. So we analyzed this for patterns, and what we see is actually a 4-man defense in 96% of games. So all but 1 game, we have 2 center backs with a left back and a right back. Also very consistent up front in having a single forward in 96%, or all but 1 game there. And so, yes, good consistency in the formation, if not in the management there. And we look at their most recent games. We said they lost the 2 games in March, so much hand-wringing about that among US fans. The warm-up games too, they didn't look so good. We'll understand throughout this podcast why that might be the case, but both of them were at home. One was a friendly on June 7th against Turkey, which they lost, and the other a friendly against Switzerland, which they lost heavily. So a 4-0 loss to Switzerland going into the Cup there. All right, that is section 1. Let's move on to section 2, and we look at the candidates. Again, we talked in detail about the managerial situation in part 1. We won't repeat, we won't repeat all of that here. We'll just say that it's Mauricio Pochettino leading them through this tournament. But I will say here, just as a preface to what's to come, Mauricio Pochettino is in really tough here. A lot of his A-team players, his best players, are involved in the FIFA Club World Cup. So we're not sure what the if there were any rules about whether teams should play with their international team or with their club team. FIFA usually chooses or favors international teams, but in this case, they're sponsoring the Club World Cup, so they're in a bit of a contradictory position. Some of the teams who did have players on the club teams, some of the other teams in the Gold Cup here, managed to retain their players from those clubs somehow. USA, though, almost all of the players connected with those Club World Cup teams are off at the Club World Cup. So they lose a lot of players and a lot of their best players there. Secondarily, USA is plagued with injury. I've never seen an injury list like it, but you will in Section 3 see a massive injury list for the USA. So a lot of players missing because of that. And then thirdly, and this may be Mauricio Pochettino's fault or the Federation's fault, for some reason, they had the benefit of having fielded a B team in the 2023 Gold Cup. So one wonders why they wouldn't revive that team. But the problem is they really haven't used those players that much over the intervening period. And the B team they produce here has very few of the B team players from 2023. It's kind of shiny new players that we're going to see here, because all of the A team and potential B team players are gone. So poor Mauricio Pochettino, he'll probably the one suffering the blame if they don't do well. But he definitely got dealt a terrible hand coming into this cup. Okay, that is the situation then. Mauricio Pochettino leading them through the cup, and we look at goalkeepers, and well, not all of their 18 players are missing. Matt Turner, a definite candidate here, is selected for the final squad. Likely candidate, Patrick Schulte, is missing because of injury, so not even named to the preliminary squad there. And next we had two possible candidates, or two candidates at the possible level. The first one, Zach Steffen, was named to the preliminary squad, but he too was out with injury and did not get selected for the final squad. The other possible candidate, Diego Cochin, also just selected for the preliminary squad. We have three possible but unlikely players, Ethan Horvath and Sean Johnson, actually not off the club for that long, or not off the team for that long, but neither of them selected even for the preliminary squad. However, the third one, Matt Fries, was selected for the final squad. So a bit of a surprise there because he had seemed unlikely. Then we had four candidates seemingly off the squad. We had four names, Drake Callender, Roman Celentano, and Gabriel Slonina, and Chris Brady. The first three of those did not make even the preliminary squad. However, Chris Brady was a surprise because he was selected for the final squad there. And so we're going to see quite a few of those surprises as we go. So there are three goalkeepers for the Gold Cup here: Matt Turner, Matt Fries, and Chris Brady. Let's go back and see how the position unfolded over the period. And well, we'll say Matt Turner has been the starter throughout and replaced only smatteringly. But the goalkeeper stepping in for him tells the story of the backup keepers. So just as for this cup, the B team in the 2023 Gold Cup for the USA, Matt Turner was nevertheless on it, and that's true here. However, he was temporarily injured in that Gold Cup, and Sean Johnson stepped in. Sean Johnson was absent through injury after the Cup, though. He came back to the bench in the summer of 2024 and was not called up again under either of the two managers, the interim manager or new manager Pochettino. The next game Turner missed was the 2nd September 2023 friendly. Ethan Horvath stepped in, and having not been selected for the 2023 Gold Cup, he was consistently favoured under the following managers until October 2024, after which point he was not called up again. Turner's next absence was the January 2024 B team friendly, and Patrick Schulte made his first appearance in this, but was not selected again until the first friendly in September, where he came in from the cold under interim manager Veris to replace Turner once again. Schulte remained on the bench and also started the January 2025 friendlies, now replacing Turner for the third time in a row. So he was on the bench in March 2024, and that's why we had him as a likely selection here. However, injury precluded him from participation. Zach Steffen played the second January friendly, and again, those were kind of experimental squads, but that was the only other game Turner had missed. Steffen had been out with a knee injury since before the 2023 Gold Cup, but after his recovery, he was not called back. However, finally, in November 2024, Steffen was called back to the bench, and in addition to his single start, he had been on the bench for all games, except for the last game in March 2025. A bit of a mysterious disappearance there because no third keeper was brought in to replace him. So where did that leave us in our predictions for starters after part one? Well, we said Matt Turner was definite, a definite starter, and we thought Patrick Schulte was the first backup keeper there, and probably Zach Steffen the second backup keeper, although that was a bit more open to question. Let's look at the warm-up games and see what happened. Obviously, Patrick Schulte out of the picture due to injury. It was actually Matt Fries in the first game. And that was probably to give him some experience, we think. Matt Turner did start the second game. So we are seeing in both of the games completely different squads used. So we just think the manager Pochettino is just giving these players a tryout because a lot of them don't have much experience at the international level, like Matt Fries here. Okay, I just have to fix up the graphics. So basically things remain the same, except Matt Fries replaces Patrick Schulte as our candidate for backup keeper there. Okay, so Matt Turner, one of the few definites that we're going to be able to make here, a definite starter. Let's move on to central defense, and lots of candidates to look at for the USA. We begin with definite candidate Tim Ream, who was selected for the final squad. We have three candidates at the likely level, and Mark McKenzie is the first. He was selected, so was the second, Chris Richards, and so too Miles Robinson. So all three of the likely candidates selected for the final squad. We have three candidates at the possible level. Cameron Carter-Vickers made the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. And the same is true of Austin Trusty, just making the preliminary squad there. But the third candidate, Walker Zimmerman, was selected for the final squad. Possible but unlikely candidate George Campbell made the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. And then we have three players seemingly off the team. That is Jalen Neal, Aaron Long, and Matt Miazga. All of those players had some involvement in 2023. That's why we put them on the list, but none of them even making the preliminary squad. So they do truly seem to be off the squad, at least for the time being. Let's look at the central defense position over the period. Once again, it's a two-man central defense in almost all of the games, all but one of the games. And in the Gold Cup, it was Aaron Long, Matt Miazga, Jalen Neal, and Miles Robinson all rotating that in that tournament under the caretaker manager Callahan. Keeping in mind this was a B team in that tournament, and only one of them appeared for the team afterwards. It was Miles Robinson, who was on the bench for most of the period and who only started periodically over the rest of the period. Miles Robinson, Tim Ream and Chris Richards, though, did rotate in the fall friendlies under returning manager Greg Berhalter, and Cameron Carter-Vickers joined that rotation briefly. But by the time of the Copa America, it was firmly Tim Reams and Chris Richards. And they continued in the fall friendlies under interim manager Veris and under new manager Pochettino. But several players were tried out, with Mark McKenzie essentially replacing Chris Richard. So Ream and McKenzie became the pairing for the November 2024 Nations League quarterfinals. Two different pairings were used in the March 2025 finals, Reams and Richard reuniting in the first, and McKenzie alongside Carter-Vickers in the second. So where did that leave our predictions? Well, we couldn't predict a definite starter, but we considered Tim Ream a likely starter there. Whoops. And among the possible starters, there were several candidates, Mark McKenzie, Chris Richards, and Cameron Carter-Vickers. And we even thought probably in that order. Let's look at the warm-up games. Well, of these candidates, all of them were are on the final squad, except for Cameron Carter-Vickers. So they're not losing a lot of central defenders here. It was two different sets of players, though. Miles Robinson and Chris Richards in the first, and then Mark McKenzie and Walker Zimmerman in the second. Interesting here that Tim Ream did not start either of those warm-up games. So we revise our list, and we just have several possible candidates now. Tim Ream, Mark McKenzie, Chris Richards, Miles Robinson, probably the four of most likely ones. Okay, that is central defenders. Let's move on to left backs. And we had no definite candidate here, but we had a likely candidate in Anthony Robinson. However, he is out due to injury, so named to the preliminary squad and not making the final cut or the final squad there. We'll talk about that injury more in section 3. We have three possible candidates. We have DeJuan Jones, who he only made the preliminary squad, also due to injury. We have Caleb Wiley, just named to the preliminary squad, not making the final cut. And we should have, in fact, we did add Max Arston. However, we accidentally added him to the list for right backs in part 1. And we should have had him here. So Max Arston did make the final cut there, and we'll just put him up on the board right away here. Yes, he's the only one of our candidates here who made it, but we continue on down the list because we had a possible but unlikely candidate in Christopher Lund. He made the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. And then two players seemingly off the squad. Jonathan Gomez, not even selected for the preliminary squad. However, John Tolkien making the final cut. So once again, we have a player that was seemingly off the squad making the final cut. That leaves us with Max Arston and John Tolkien over here. Let's look at the situation over the period. So John Tolkien actually did start the first game for the B team in the 2023 Gold Cup under caretaker manager Callahan. DeJuan Jones replaced him and started the last 4 games of the Gold Cup there. And Jones did start again after the Gold Cup, but only in 2 B team friendlies. Anthony Robinson was the main left back. after that, playing about 2/3 of the games. When Anthony Robinson was absent, he was replaced by several different names, but the one who appeared the most was Christopher Lund, 3 times there. However, Lund was not called up for the last 6 matches, and Anthony Robinson was not called up for the 2 Nations League final games in March of 2025. So in March 2025, right back Joe Scally stepped in for those 2 matches. So our prediction after part 1 was likely starter was Anthony Robinson as a likely starter there. We couldn't say definite because he wasn't consistently there enough. And possible starter, right back Joe Scally seemed the only candidate. However, things have changed since. Let's look at the warm-up games. And, well, all of the candidates are basically gone, except for Max Arston. And he did start both of those games. So John Tolkien not making it onto the field there. And so our revised prediction would be having Max Arston as a definite candidate. With maybe, I guess, Tolkien as a backup there. Okay, let's go over to the right back situation. And before we go on, we'll just do a little administrative stuff, removing Max Arston from the list of right backs because he should have been among the left backs. Okay, what do we have here? We have a definite candidate in Joe Scally, but he was not selected for the final squad, just the preliminary squad. Next, we have no candidates at the likely level, but 3 candidates at the possible level. Serginho Dest, not making the final cut there. He was on the preliminary squad, but not selected. Shaq Moore, also just on the preliminary squad and not selected. And Marion Fossey, same. So all 3 of our possible candidates, sorry, that's Marlon Fossey, making the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. We had 2 players seemingly off the squad, Brian Reynolds and DeAndre Yedlin, and neither of those even making the preliminary squad. So we have no one here so far, and that's probably the reason they brought in 2 new candidates. It is Alexander Freeman and Nathan Harriel. So because these players weren't on our list for part 1, we'll introduce them here. Alexander Freeman is 21 years old. Up until the warm-up games, he had never appeared for the USA. And he plays for Orlando City in the USA. Nathan Harriel is the same situation, never appeared. Oh no, he actually did appear on the bench in the January 2024 experimental friendly. That was his only appearance for the USA, and he plays for Philadelphia Union in the USA. So that's what we have here, the 2 new candidates. And let's look at the warm-up games. And we see that each of them started 1 game there in the June friendlies. So those are the only candidates here, and let us go back and look at the position over the period, even though all of the players are gone. It was in the Gold Cup, DeAndre Yedlin starting the first game, and he was replaced by Brian Reynolds for the following 4 games. However, neither of them started again after the Cup. Serginho Dest assumed the position under returning manager Berhalter, but his reign abruptly ended in March of 2024, and Serginho Dest has not been called up since. Joe Scally replaced Dest, or he had replaced Dest a couple of times when Dest was absent, and now Joe Scally took over the position. Scally sometimes did play other positions or was even benched. In these cases, the right back position was taken up by right winger Yunus Musa. including the one time they used a three-man defence. Scally became a central defender that time, so was replaced twice by Shaq Moore in the B team friendlies, and 2 other times by single appearances, including left winger Matt Orfston. We now consider him a left defender. Matt Orfston replacing him on the right in the last game, with Joe Scally playing on the left. All right, so that left us after section 1 thinking that, well, we weren't bold enough to name a definite starter, but Joe Scally as a likely starter there, and Max Orfston and Shaq Moore as perhaps the backups in the position. However, yes, 2 of those players didn't make it onto the final squad. It's very hard to keep track of all of this. And let's look at the warm-up games. What we have in the warm-up games is our 2 new candidates, Freeman and Harriel, each starting one of the games. And so where does that leave us for our predictions? I think we are going to say that it will be Alexander Freeman and or Nathan Harriel, with perhaps Max Orfston acting as a backup for this position, although he will probably be the starter on the left side. So we took him off the list for that reason. So yes, well, that's all that's available to them there, so not a lot to choose from. Okay, let's move on to the midfield. It is time to move up onto the midfield, and we begin with the versatile midfielder. That was Yunus Musa. He was selected for the preliminary squad, as a lot of the players on teams involved in the Club World Cup, but we're presuming that the Club World Cup is the reason he and several others were not available for the squad. So Yunus Musa, not a candidate here. Let's go to defensive midfielders next. We had no candidates at the definite level, but at the possible level, likely level, we had Tyler Adams, and he was selected for the final squad. And our possible candidate, Luca De La Torre, also making the tournament here. Possible but unlikely candidate, Amika Anili, is actually out with an injury, so we assume that's the reason, or that played a part in his non-selection. However, he was an unlikely candidate anyway. And seemingly off the squad, James Sands, not selected even for the preliminary squad. We're actually going to go through the whole midfield, or 2 central midfielders first, and then come back and get into our predictions. So for central midfielders, no one at the definite level, but we have Tanner Tessman at the likely level. However, he was not selected for the final squad. We have 4 possible candidates. The first is Gianluca Busio. He was selected for the preliminary squad, but like Tasman, didn't make the final cut there. In his case, though, in Busio's case, it was due to injury. The second possible candidate, Johnny Cardoso, was selected for the final squad. The third one, Aidan Morris, just the preliminary squad there. And he also was an injury concern. And finally, Jack McGlynn, at the possible level, and he too was selected like Johnny Cardoso. 2 candidates at the possible but unlikely level, Timothy Tillman making the preliminary squad, but he is on LAFC, Los Angeles FC, which is involved in the Club World Cup. So that may have been the reason, although he was unlikely. Benja Kramashi not even making the preliminary squad. And then we have 6 players at the seemingly off the squad level, and none of them even made Wait a minute, the last of them made the preliminary squad, so I'll just deal with him first. That is Sean Zawadzki. He made the preliminary squad, but actually is injured, so we're not sure whether it's the injury or the fact that he was very unlikely as the reason he's not selected. The other five, though, were not selected even for the preliminary squad. That is Callan Acosta, Taylor Booth, Christian Roldan, Eric Williamson, and Jackson Ewell. There. So a lot of candidates there in the central midfield. And now and we have a couple to add. Because among all of those candidates, we only have Johnny Cardoso and Jack Glynn coded as central midfielders. So two new names to add here. We have Quinn Sullivan and Sebastian Berhalter. There we go. So let us go and look at the position over the period now, kind of a summary of the position. How did all of these candidates fit in? And wow, I have to scroll up so much to get to the summary. Okay, in the Gold Cup, it was James Sands and Aidan Morris as starters. Again, that was a B team under caretaker manager BJ Callahan. And then the formation became a 4-3-3 over the next 4 games. So we're dealing with 3 central midfielders here. Sands remains in the middle with central midfielder Gianluca Buscio on the left and attacking midfielder Georgi Mihailovic on the right. However, none of those players figure much after the narrative. Only Buscio and Aidan Morris with periodic call-ups and starts. Including starting together in both of the October 2024 friendlies. After the Gold Cup, Yunus Musa was the main central midfielder, if we introduced him as a versatile midfielder there. So Yunus Musa, the main man, Luca de la Torre either replacing or joining him in 2 of the games. In the second March 2024 game, that was the 2023-24 Nations League finals. Tyler Adams stepped in and played the role in all 3 games of the Copa America as well. Tyler Adams was gone after that poor performance in the Copa America, but he did return to play both games in March of 2025. Meanwhile, Musa returned to the spot, and then we had players showing up like Johnny Cardoso and Tanner Tessman towards the end. So several players appearing just once there, and that included Weston McKennie actually popped up more than once. So quite a complex situation there. And where did that leave us in terms of our predictions after part 1? Well, it was too confused to suggest a definite or likely candidate. So we landed on Tyler Adams and Yunus Musa as possible candidates. Well, Tyler Adams is selected for the Cup, but Yunus Musa is not. So we'll have to change it. Let's look at the warm-up games to see if they inform us. And here we have De La Torre and Cardoso starting in the first game in a 2-man midfield. By the way, both of these formations were 4-2-3-1. So De La Torre and Cardoso in the first game, and Berhalter and Cardoso in the second game. So Cardoso starting both of those games, and we revise our predictions to three possible starters there. We think Tyler Adams, Luca de la Torre, or Johnny Cardoso. We do find it interesting that probably the most likely candidate, Tyler Adams, was not fielded, and that was true in central defence with Tim Ream, who seemed the most likely candidate, not fielded. But we still consider them probably the most likely candidates as starters. Okay, we move on up to, well, with the USA, they used a 4-3-3 formation so often that we decided to cover it separately, left midfielders and right midfielders in that 4-3-3 formation. So let's look at the candidates first. This is where a lot of candidates are missing, actually. We have, for left midfielders, Giovanni Reina. He's coded as an attacking midfielder, but we moved him over here because this is where he primarily played, or it best suited the narrative to talk about him here. Giovanni Reina, not selected even for the preliminary squad. He is with Borussia Dortmund, which is involved in the Club World Cup. We do have possible candidate Diego Luna, who was selected for the squad. And then we had seemingly off the squad, Georgi Mihailovic, actually selected for the preliminary squad, but not making the final cut. Let's go to right midfielders. We have a definite candidate in Weston McKennie. He also involved in the World Cup with Juventus and not selected even for the preliminary squad. And then we go all the way down to seemingly off the squad, Julian Gressel, who also was not selected even for the preliminary squad. So we won't go into detail on these positions. We won't summarize the positions because there's no point. All of the candidates except for Diego Luna are gone. So we really doubt they're going to use a 4-3-3 formation because the midfield is now too thin. So that's that, and we're going to move on to the attacking end of the field, attacking midfielders. And here we have no versatile attackers, so we're going to start with left-sided attackers. And we begin with definite candidate Christian Pulisic. He was selected for the preliminary squad, but we explained in part one that he seemed to ask to be left out of the cup and was given special permission by US Soccer to not play in the cup because of the number of minutes that he had played over the season. That was the report that we read, and it seems to be true because he's not selected for the squad. We have three possible candidates. The first is Brendan Aronson, who was selected here. The second, Cade Cowell, part of the 2023 Gold Cup B team there, but not even selected for the preliminary squad here. And we have Brian Gutierrez selected for the preliminary squad, but not making the final cut. Two players seemingly off the squad, Paul Arriola and Kevin Paredes, not selected even for the preliminary squad there. Let's talk about the position over the period. And four different players were used in the 2023 Gold Cup B team there. Only Cade Cowell was used twice, and none of them playing more than a minor role going forward. Christian Pulisic is the A-team player in the role, and in fact, he rarely misses. However, he does sometimes switch positions in the attacking midfield there and becomes a central attacking midfielder sometimes. So when he is absent, who replaces him? Well, there hasn't been a kind of a defined replacement. Brendan Aronson stepped in twice, and he seems the closest thing to a replacement. Newcomer Brian Gutierrez played the two B-team January friendlies, and he was carried over to the bench for the first of the March 2025 game. So perhaps he is under consideration too. Well, apparently not, because he wasn't selected for the final squad. Anyway, after part one, we considered Christian Pulisic a definite candidate in this position, and we considered his backups to be Brian Gutierrez or I didn't put Pulisic on the list there. So Pulisic, the definite starter, and Brian Gutierrez or Brendan Aronson, the backups. That's where we were at after doing part one. But of course, so much has changed. Let's look at the warm-up games. Brian Gutierrez not selected. So Brandon Aronson seems the only viable candidate, along with, if you recall, left midfielder Diego Luna was just kind of left hanging in the wind there. So now looks like a left attacker here, and each of them started one of the games. So Luna starting the first game, Brendan Aronson the second, and that seems to be what they have for candidates. So our revised starter lineup looks like uh, uh, likely starters Brendan Aronson or Diego Luna. Okay, let's go to the right attacking side of the field. We have two definite candidates here. Timothy Weah, who was not even selected for the preliminary squad. He plays for Juventus, which is involved in the Club World Cup. However, the other definite candidate, Malik Tillman, was selected for the squad. He was an injury concern. We'll report on that in section 3. The next one down is at the possible level. It's Alejandro Zendejas. Alejandro Zendejas just making the preliminary squad there, but not the final cut. And the possible but unlikely Indiana Vasilev, not selected even for the preliminary squad. So we just left with one candidate over here, Malik Tillman. Let's talk about the position over the period. In the Gold Cup, it was Alejandro Zendejas playing the first 3 games as the right attacker, and he also played one game as a left attacker, so he was important in that cup. However, he did not start again, and 18 player Timothy Weah took over, playing all 4 of the fall 2023 friendlies. Ultimately, though, Timothy Weah only played half of the games. He struggled with 3 injuries over the period, and also, if you recall, a suspension over an odd lashing out in the Copa America that earned him a red card. Various players then replaced Timothy Weah. About half of them out of position players like Pulisic and Giovanni Reina, and various players in single appearances. So here too, only Brendan Aronson appeared twice, and we can't really identify a clear backup player for the position. Weah did return to a regular starting position in March of 2025. However, he did start on the left side as left attacker in both of those games. So what were we left with after part 1? Well, we thought Timothy Weah is the definite starter, but we worried that there was no really definable backup player for the position. Of course, Timothy Weah now not on the squad. So let's look at the warm-up games to see who filled it. We only have Malik Tillman as the only candidate here, and he's actually coded as an attacking midfielder. What we actually get is central midfielders filling the position. Jack McGlynn and the newly named Quinn Sullivan, each starting once. Jack McGlynn and Quinn Sullivan. You'll soon see why Malik Tillman was not selected for the squad. But anyway, we revise our starting predictors to be one of those two, Jack McGlynn or Quinn Sullivan. Keep Malik Tillman in mind because he's coded as an attacking midfielder, and that's where he ends up playing in the warm-up games here. We had put him on the right side because most of his games there during the period were on the right side. Anyway, central attackers. USA does use this position quite a bit. It requires a 4-2-3-1 formation. Classically for a central attacking midfielder, and USA used it about half the time. And after Pochettino's 2 strange formations in October of 2023, he used a 4-2-3-1 consistently afterwards, including the 2 warm-up games here. So we pretty much expect him to use that in the Cup. Okay, so let's look at the candidates that we have here. Some of them we moved out, like Malik Tillman. We moved him to other positions because that's where he had played over the period. We saw Brendan Aronson. We also moved to the left side, but both of those coded as attacking midfielders. On our list here, we just have players at the possible but unlikely level. We have Caden Clark and Matko Miljevic. Both of those made the preliminary squad, despite being possible but unlikely, but neither of them made the final cut there. For three players seemingly off the squad, we have Alan Sonora and Paxton Pomykal. Neither of those named even to the preliminary squad. However, in the middle was Paxton Aronson, and he was named to the final squad despite seemingly off the squad when we did part one. So another surprise, one of many surprises there. And let us look at the position over the period. So central midfielder Alan Sonora started in the 2023 Gold Cup B team under the caretaker manager BJ Callahan there. But after that, the USA moved to a 4-3-3 formation, so this position was not used, and nor was Sonoro, although he had been highly touted at the beginning of the Gold Cup there. The position was revived again for only 2 games under returning manager Berhalter, and in both cases it was Giovanni Reyna playing in that position. Its next use was in the September 2024 games under interim manager Veris, and it was Brendan Aronson filling the position. And from November, manager Pochettino used the position regularly, or used the formation regularly, but not counting the January friendlies. Christian Pulisic filled the position 3 out of 4 times. In the January friendly, Diego Luna was in the position once. And let's take a look at the, let's see what we thought after part one. Well, we couldn't nominate a definite or likely starter over here. But we are pretty sure they're going to use the position, and we had possible starters: Giovanni Reyna, Christian Pulisic, and Brendan Aronson. There actually, Christian Pulisic would have been at the head of that list. However, they are not selected, Pulisic and Reyna. So let's see who filled the position in the warm-up games. And we have in the first game, sorry, I'm just finding my spot. We actually have Tillman, Malik Tillman, who is coded as an attacking midfielder in the first match, and Paxton Aronson in the second one. And they seem the only possibilities here. Perhaps Luna, although we've kind of put him on the left side over here. So we think that they're going to be likely starters at this point. So that's what we got, likely starters, Tillman or Aronson, Paxton Aronson. Okay, that is it for the midfield, and we move on to forwards. We have no players at the secondary striker level, and they don't use the position. So we move on to the forwards and look at the candidates. We have a definite candidate in Folarin Balogun, but he is not selected. He was on the preliminary squad, but not selected due to injury. We'll talk about all of those injuries in section 3 here. Ricardo Pepi, also an injury and not even named to the preliminary squad there. We had 3 likely candidates. Josh Sargent, he made the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. Haji Wright was selected for the final squad. So is the third possible candidate, Patrick Aguiman. 2 candidates at the possible level, Brandon Vasquez, part of the 2023 Gold Cup B team squad there, only selected for the preliminary squad here, and Brian White, He was selected for the final squad here. And so was possible but unlikely Damien Downs, named to the final squad. And then the 3 players seemingly off the squad, Daryl Dike, Jesus Ferreira, Matthew Hoppy. Again, those last 2 featured in the 2023 Gold Cup B team squad, but not even a consideration here, not named to the preliminary squad. So there we have it, our forwards. Let's look at the summary of the position over the period. Jesus Ferreira was the starter in the first 4 games of the 2023 Gold Cup B team under caretaker manager BJ Callahan, and Brandon Vazquez stepped in for the last game there. Ferreira was never called up again, and Vazquez did reappear as a sub in the fall of 2024, but didn't feature much over the period. Actually, Folarin Balogun was the A-team candidate and had a stranglehold on the position until October 2024, when injury put him out for the last 8 games. So Ricardo Pepi partnered with Balogun in the only game they had with 2 forwards, and both he and Haji Wright got starts the few times Balogun had been used as a sub. However, with Balogun's injury, the little used Josh Sargent got the start for both October 2024 games. Those were the first games under new manager Pochettino. Ricardo Pepi started both November Nations League quarterfinal games, but then was injured for the March games and is injured now. And newcomer Patrick Agyman was tried out in the January 2025 friendlies, and it earned him a start in one of the 2025 March games, Josh Sargent starting the other. So after part 1, we thought Folarin Balogun was a definite starter there, and then possible starters Patrick Agyman and Josh Sargent. Well, we've seen that Balogun is out and Josh Sargent was not selected. So our options are limited here. Let's look and see what they did in the warm-up games. It was Patrick Agyman starting the first game, and then Brian White, starting the second one. So we revised our opinion here, and we have Patrick Agyman as the likely starter. We don't know why Haji Wright was not used. We're a bit surprised he wasn't used in the warm-up games, but we do think he's still in the picture. And Brian White, also a possible candidate there. All right, that brings us to the end of section 2. Our look at the candidates, the many candidates, and we move into section 3 and begin section 3 with our spotlight review. So in the spotlight review, we are going to race through the team and let you know who was selected, many of the players on the preliminary squad, and what our predicted starters are. So let's go back to the top and begin with the manager, Mauricio Pochettino. We will consider him a selection for the squad. He'll be leading them through it. And we go to goalkeepers. We have definite candidate Matt Turner, who was selected for the squad. Likely candidate Patrick Schulte, not selected even for the preliminary squad. That's because of injury. Our 2 possible candidates, Zach Steffen and Diego Cochin, both of those only making the preliminary squad. Possible but unlikely candidates, Ethan Horvath and Sean Johnson, were involved over the period, but were not even considered here, not even making the preliminary squad. But we have possible but unlikely Matt Freese as a surprise selection. And then even more surprising, one of our 4 seemingly off the squad candidates, Chris Brady, selected for the final squad. So we have Matt Turner, Matt Freese and Chris Brady as our goalkeepers. In terms of prediction, we think Matt Turner is a definite starter, and Matt Freese will be the backup, we think. On to defenders. We had a definite candidate in Tim Ream, who was selected for the squad. 3 likely candidates, all of them selected: Mark McKenzie, Chris Richards, and Miles Robinson. And then 3 possible candidates: Cameron Carter-Vickers and Austin Trusty, just making the preliminary squad, but Walker Zimmerman selected for the final squad. We're not going to go through players who are possible but unlikely or seemingly off the squad unless there is reason to. In this case, there isn't. So let's go to possible starters here. We think it could be any one of the candidates here: Tim Ream, Mark McKenzie, Chris Richard, and Miles Robinson, perhaps even Walker Zimmerman. We're not really sure. We can't determine a starter there. Okay, let's go to left backs. We had no definite or no candidates at the definite level. The likely candidate, Anthony Robinson, made the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. That's due to injury. 2 of our 3 possible candidates, Dewan Jones and Caleb Wiley, just selected for the preliminary squad, but Max Arfston selected for the final squad. And then surprise selection, John Tolkien, seemingly off the squad but selected for the squad. So in terms of starters, we think it's definitely going to be Max Arfston starting as a left back position. Over to the right side, we had definite candidate Joe Scully, not selected for the final squad, nor were any of our 3 possible candidates Serginho Dest, Shaq Moore, or Marlon Fossey. All 3 of those making the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. We do have 2 new candidates added. We kind of have to, because there are no candidates. So newcomers Alexander Freeman and Nathan Harriel named to the squad, newly named to the squad. And we think those 2 will be the likely starters, because they're the only candidates, Alexander Freeman and or Nathan Harriel as right backs. On to the midfield, we had 1 player as a versatile midfielder, Yunus Musa. He was not selected. He was selected for the preliminary squad, but not selected for the final squad due to his involvement in the Club World Cup. So we go to defensive midfielders. No candidates at the definite level here, but we have the likely Tyler Adams selected for the final squad, as well as the possible Luca de la Torre selected for the final squad. We'll look at central midfielders before we predict starters. We have a likely Tanner Tessman, not selected for the final squad, just on the preliminary squad there. And then we have 4 possible candidates. 2 of them making the final squad, Johnny Cardoso and Jack McGlynn, but 2 of them not making the final squad, Gianluca Busio and Aidan Morris, both of them due to due to injury. Aidan Morris, a bit of a strange case there. We'll cover that later in section 3 here. And then we won't go into any of the players below that level, any of the 8 players below that level, but we will introduce new candidates, Quinn Sullivan and Sebastian Berhalter, both added to the squad. They had not been on our list before, and they are on the squad. Let's go to the predictions for starter then. Well, we're really unsure over here, so we can't predict a definite or even likely starter. We have 3 possible starters: Tyler Adams, Luca de la Torre, and Johnny Cardoso. On to we'll talk a bit about right and left midfielders here. We had a likely candidate for left midfielder, Giovanni Reyna. And like many candidates here, he's miscoded. He's actually an attacking midfielder, but we put him on the left here because that's where he's played. So whenever you see a miscoded player, it'll be because that's where they've been playing over the recent period. Anyway, Giovanni Reyna, not even named to the preliminary squad. He's going to be at the Club World Cup. Possible candidate Diego Luna, though, he was selected. He's the only one of our right and left midfielders that is selected. On the right side, we had definite candidate Weston McKennie, but he's also off at the Club World Cup. So what we think is that even though they used a 4-3-3 formation with left and right midfielders over this period, that they're not going to use it in the Cup. For one thing, Pochettino has not used that formation, and for another, there are too many players missing for them to use it. Up we go to the attacking midfield, and we start with left attackers. Definite candidate Christian Pulisic on the preliminary squad, but not selected for the final squad for reasons that I won't get into. No candidates at the likely level, and 3 candidates at the possible level. The first of them, Brendan Aronson, making the final squad. Brian Gutierrez, just the preliminary squad, and Cade Cowell, not even named to the preliminary squad there. In terms of predicted starters, we think likely starters, either Brendan Aronson or Diego Luna, who we met as a left midfielder just a moment ago. Over to the right attacking end of the field, we had a definite candidate in Timothy Weah, not even named to the preliminary squad because of his involvement in the Club World Cup. And we have Malik Tillman, who was selected for the final squad. Possible candidate Alejandro Zendejas, just named to the preliminary squad, but not making the final cut. So what do we have for predictions over here? Well, we're going to see that the only candidate remaining, Malik Tillman, is going to play as a central attacking midfielder. And so we have no one left over here. We go with central midfielders that we introduced, Jack McGlynn and Quinn Sullivan. We think it's likely that one of them, or perhaps both of them, are going to be starters over here on the right side. Okay, let's go to central attackers. And actually, we didn't have anyone at the definite, likely, or possible level. But what we did have was seemingly off the squad, Paxton Aronson selected for the squad. And when it comes to predictions there, we think it is Malik Tillman, who we just met as a right attacker, or Paxton Aronson starting as a central attacker in the 4-2-3-1 formation that we expect Pochettino to use. Let's go on to forwards then, and we had definite candidate Folarin Balogun selected for the preliminary squad, but not making the final cut due to injury. Ricardo Pepe also not selected even for the preliminary squad. That too is due to injury. 3 likely candidates. The first of them, Josh Sargent, just making the preliminary squad, but the other 2, Haji Wright and Patrick Aguiman, both named to the final squad here. 2 possible candidates, Brandon Vasquez just making the preliminary squad, but Brian White selected for the final squad. And then a possible but unlikely candidate, Damian Downs, named to the final squad. Good Lord, that is something. And it's the end of our Spotlight review. And we move on to section 3. Where we review surprises. Now we're going to go really fast here because we don't have time to say everything that we said in section 2. So I'm really just going to list names here. Many of these, though, were at the Club World Cup. However, the first one, Christian Pulisic, it's due to special permission to not play. And well, he would have been a definite candidate, of course. Most of these are. Yunus Musa off at the Club World Cup with Inter Milan. Timothy Weah with Juventus. Weston McKennie also with Juventus. Giovanni Reina with Borussia Dortmund. And some of those were named to the preliminary squad, Pulisic and Musa, and some of them were not, Weah, McKennie, and Reina. So we're not really sure why that is. We have forward Folarin Balogun out due to injury. So I actually shouldn't put him here. We'll deal with him in the injury section. We'll stick just with players who are just not selected for other reasons. Joe Scally, the right back, we considered him a definite candidate, but he was not selected. Josh Sargent, he was playing quite a bit at the end there under Pochettino, and we considered him likely, but he was not selected. So all of those players not selected for reason other than injuries. Of course, that's the reason why we have so many surprise inclusions, and we'll list those. Matt Freese, we considered possible but unlikely. The goalkeeper, Matt Freese, but he was selected for the final squad, and so was goalkeeper Chris Brady, even more of a surprise since we had him seemingly off the squad. We have left back John Tolkien. He actually started in the Gold Cup there in 2023, but was off the team pretty shortly after that. But he's back here, selected for the final squad. He's a left back. Paxton Harrison, an attacking midfielder, we had considered seemingly off the squad, but here he is selected. And then Damien Downs, the forward, who we considered a possible but unlikely candidate. We also had 4 new players added to the squad, players who had really not been in our soccer files. I think one of them was because he started a friendly in January of 2024. But for the most part, these are brand new players. And the first one is central midfielder Quinn Sullivan, and also a central midfielder, Sebastian Berhalter, and then 2 right backs, Alexander Freeman and Nathan Harriel. All 4 of those newly added to the squad. Okay, let's move on to our update on injuries. I've copied, if you're looking at the YouTube feed here, what we had after doing part 1. And what a list. There must be 15 names on that list. And we're going to go through them very quickly here. So actually in part 1 we did report that Miles Robinson, the central defender, was recovered from injury, so he was selected for the final squad. Same is true of Malik Tillman. We reported that he had recovered, and so we can kind of take them off the list here. Serginho Dest did recover from injury but was not selected for the final squad here. So let's put those names on the list. We'll say Miles Robinson recovered from injury, Serginho Dest recovered but not selected, and Malik Tillman recovered and selected. Okay, then we have, well, we'll go through them here. We have goalkeeper Patrick Schulte, injured and not selected for the preliminary squad. He had been a likely candidate, so we'll say dropped due to injury. Zach Steffen had been a possible candidate, but he missed, well, we reported that he missed 3 of the last 4 games with a muscle injury. That was true, but there was 1 game after that, and he was out of that, though not with a muscle injury, but with a knee injury. So good Lord, Zach Steffen, it will say injured, but not a strong candidate there. Next, we have Anthony Robinson. There was no change to the status we reported in part 1. He is just he is injured for the cup. Same with the other left defender, Dewan Jones, out of the cup due to injury. Next, we have defensive midfielder Amika Anelli, I'm sorry, but he was just a possible but unlikely candidate there. Nevertheless, injury preventing his consideration. Gianluca Busio, not even named to the preliminary squad in his case. Most of the other ones I've talked about were, but Gianluca Busio, his situation has not changed from what we reported in section 1. So we'll say he was dropped due to injury. He wasn't named to the preliminary squad. Next, we have Aidan Morris. We reported a bit of an odd situation in the in part one, and I'll just repeat it here. There's no change to his status. It's still weird. He's listed with a knee injury for the national team, even for the June 2025 games. However, he's been playing for his club consistently since mid-January. So we don't know what's going on there. We only considered him a possible candidate. So we'll put him on the injured, but was not a strong candidate. Next, we have Timothy Tillman. He's involved in the Club World Cup with LAFC. So we actually should have covered him in the previous section there. And we have Christian Roldan also. I'm going to go back up to the section here because he too is out because of the Club World Cup. Christian Roldan playing for Seattle Sounders. And Timothy Tillman with LAFC. Timothy Tillman was a possible but unlikely candidate anyway, and Christian Roldan seemingly off the squad. So we doubt they would have been selected anyway, but their Club World Cup involvement precludes them. Keep moving down that list. We have Sean Zawadzki, a central midfielder. He seemed seemingly off the squad, but not considerable due to his injury. And that is... we have a couple of forwards. Following Balogun, no change in his status. He had been a definite candidate, but what we reported in part one remains the same. He's out of the cup injured. And then finally, Ricardo Pepi, he was out. I think he was expected back on July 1st, which would have been too late. So they didn't even put him on the preliminary squad. But he was a definite candidate here. So we have him also dropped due to injury. So good Lord, so many problems for Mauricio Pochettino. And I can't help but think he's going to get blamed if they don't do well in the cup. And I got to say, it's how can they do well in the cup? I mean, some of these players really come from the bowels of our soccer files. Some of them are newly added to the squad. They may surprise and do well, but with the basically A team and B team both out, how can much be expected of Mauricio Pochettino? Anyway, that is it. We do have one kind of an announcement to make in the outro here, and that is there's always a few changes just in the lead up to the cup. Some players who are named to the final squad being replaced. I know of one for Canada already, and there's always a few of those. So we're going to do a bonus podcast just before the cup. That'll be a last minute update. We'll do all the teams at the same time, and it'll be on any changes that happen between the time we did part 2 of the mediacast here and the start of the tournament. So stay tuned for that, and we hope that our look at the USA squad has not been too confusing, but rather informative. We would like to thank Future Babes for the wonderful music you hear in this podcast. The title is called Alone.